Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a story of division, desperation, and ultimately unity. We're talking about the Berlin Wall, a symbol of the Cold War that literally split a city in two. But why was it built in the first place? And how did this impenetrable barrier come crashing down? Let's get into it. To understand the wall, we have to rewind to the end of World War II in 1945. Germany was defeated, and the Allied powers, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and the Soviet Union, divided the country into 4 occupation zones. Berlin, the capital, was deep inside the Soviet zone, but it too was split into 4 sectors. This was meant to be a temporary arrangement, but it didn't take long for cracks to appear. The Western Allies wanted to rebuild Germany as a democratic capitalist nation. The Soviet Union, under Joseph Stalin, had a different vision, a communist state under its control. This ideological clash created 2 Germanys. In 1949, the 3 Western zones merged to form the Federal Republic of Germany, or West Germany. The Soviets responded by creating the German Democratic Republic, or East Germany. This left Berlin in a very strange situation. West Berlin became an island of freedom and capitalism surrounded entirely by communist East Germany, and people started to notice the difference. Life in West Germany was booming. The economy was recovering thanks to the Marshall Plan, and people enjoyed political freedoms and consumer goods. In East Germany, however, the economy struggled under a centralized, state-controlled system. Political dissent was crushed by the secret police, the Stasi, and life was filled with shortages and restrictions. It's no surprise, then, that many East Germans saw West Berlin as their escape hatch. Between 1949 and 1961, an estimated 2.5 to 3 million people fled from East to West Germany, most of them through the open border in Berlin. This was a massive brain drain. These weren't just random people. They were often the most skilled and educated: doctors, engineers, teachers, and young professionals. For the East German government, this was a public relations nightmare and an economic disaster. Their socialist paradise was being abandoned in droves. They had to stop the exodus, and they had to do it fast. So, in the early hours of August 13th, 1961, the world woke up to shocking news. East German soldiers had begun rolling out barbed wire and setting up concrete posts, sealing the border between East and West Berlin. Families were separated in an instant. People who had crossed into the West for a day's work suddenly found they couldn't go home. The makeshift barrier was quickly replaced by something far more formidable. Over the next few years, this barrier evolved into the Berlin Wall we often picture. It wasn't just one wall, it was a complex system of 2 concrete walls, separated by a death strip. This no man's land was filled with watchtowers, guard dogs, beds of nails, and tripwire activated machine guns. Guards were given orders to shoot anyone attempting to cross. The official East German name for the wall was the Anti-Fascist Protection Rampart, claiming it was to keep Western spies and fascists out. But everyone knew its real purpose: to keep its own citizens in. Life in a divided Berlin became the new normal. On the western side, the wall was a canvas for graffiti artists, a symbol of oppression that they protested against. On the eastern side, it was a constant, gray reminder of their confinement. But even this terrifying barrier couldn't extinguish the human desire for freedom. Over the 28 years it stood, an estimated 5,000 people attempted to escape over, under, or through the wall. Some were successful, using ingenious methods like hot air balloons, tunnels, or even specially modified cars. But many were not. It's estimated that at least 140 people died trying to cross the Berlin Wall. So what changed? How did this symbol of iron-fisted control finally fall? The answer isn't a single event, but a series of cracks that weakened the foundation of the entire Eastern Bloc. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union's economy was crumbling. They were bogged down in a costly war in Afghanistan and struggling to keep up with the West's technological advancements. In 1985, a new leader came to power in Moscow, Mikhail Gorbachev. Gorbachev knew the Soviet system was failing. He introduced 2 radical new policies: glasnost, meaning openness, which allowed for more public discussion, and freedom of speech, and perestroika, meaning restructuring, which aimed to reform the economy. He also made it clear that the Soviet Union would no longer use military force to prop up communist regimes in other Eastern European countries. This was a game changer. It was like he told the satellite states, "You're on your own." The winds of change began to blow across Eastern Europe. In Poland, the Solidarity movement gained power. In Hungary, the government began dismantling its border fence with Austria in the summer of 1989. This created a new escape route. Thousands of East Germans traveled to Hungary as tourists and simply walked across the open border into Austria, and from there to West Germany. The dam was beginning to break. Back in East Germany, the pressure was immense. Inspired by the changes elsewhere, people began to protest. At first, it was just a few brave souls, but soon, massive demonstrations filled the streets of cities like Leipzig. People chanted, "Wir sind das Volk," "We are the people." They were demanding freedom, free elections, and the right to travel. The East German government was in a crisis. Their Soviet backers were gone, their people were protesting, and their citizens were fleeing through Hungary. The tipping point came on the evening of November 9th, 1989. The East German government, desperate to calm the situation, decided to ease travel restrictions. At a rather dull press conference, a government official named Günter Schabowski was handed a note about the new policy. He hadn't been fully briefed on it. A reporter asked him when the new rules would take effect. Confused, Schabowski shuffled through his papers and stammered, "As far as I know, effective immediately, without delay." That was it. That was the spark. The news spread like wildfire. East German television announced that the border was open. Crowds of euphoric East Berliners surged towards the border crossings. The guards were overwhelmed. They had no clear orders. Faced with a massive, peaceful crowd chanting, "Open the gate!" they made a historic decision. Shortly before midnight, the first crossing at Bornholmer Straße was opened. What followed was one of the most incredible street parties in history. People flooded through the checkpoints, weeping, cheering, and embracing strangers. West Berliners greeted them with flowers and champagne. People climbed onto the wall, dancing and singing. Armed with hammers and chisels, they began to physically tear down the structure that had imprisoned them for nearly 3 decades. The Berlin Wall had fallen. The fall of the Berlin Wall wasn't just the end of a physical barrier. It symbolized the end of the Cold War and the failure of a brutal ideology. Within a year, Germany was officially reunified. The story of the wall is a powerful reminder that no wall is permanent, and that the human spirit's desire for freedom can eventually overcome even the most imposing obstacles. Thank you so much for joining me on this historical journey today. It's a story that I think is incredibly important to remember. If you found this video interesting, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what you think is the most powerful part of this story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.